As a way of reviewing clauses, we'll begin with the adjective clause. And an adjective clause, like other adjectives, modifies both nouns and pronouns. Further, adjective clauses answer the questions which one, what kind, and how many. With clauses, subordinate clauses, we have another level that we look at as well, and that is the word that introduces the clause. In this case, a relative pronoun or a relative adverb, the words when and where. So if we had a sentence such as, the girl who loved dogs became a vet, it would break down like this. Became is a verb, loved is a verb. Who became a vet? The girl became a vet. That's my independent clause. The girl became a vet. Who is the subject of loved? Dogs is the direct object of dogs. Who loved dogs is my subordinate clause. Let's go through how we would analyze that. Who loved dogs modifies the girl, which is a noun or pronoun. It answers which one, which girl, the girl who loved dogs, and it is introduced by the relative pronoun who. Similarly, adverb clauses modify verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. They answer when, where, how much, to what extent, and under what conditions, and they are introduced by subordinating conjunctions. So if we had a sentence such as, since I moved, I have many friends, many new friends. As always, let's start with the verbs. Have is a verb, moved is a verb. The subject of moved is I. The subject of have is I. Have is an action verb. Have what? New friends, there's my direct object. I have new friends. That's a sentence or independent clause. Since I moved is not a sentence, therefore it's a subordinate clause. Since tells me when I have. So it's modifying a verb, it's answering when, and it's introduced by a subordinating conjunction. In order to fully understand noun clauses, we need to have a sense of the jobs that a noun can do. So in the center of our graphic, we have noun or pronoun. And up on the top, we'll put subject. Every sentence needs a subject. Nouns can also be direct objects, indirect objects, objects of the preposition, and predicate nominatives. So, for example, in a sentence like, whoever runs fast will win the race, we start as always with the verbs, runs and will win. The subject of runs is whoever. Will win is an action verb. Will win what? The race is the direct object. Our sentence needs a subject. Who or what will win the race? Whoever runs fast. This is an example of a noun clause acting as the subject. The next topic is sentence structure. This examines the way that sentences are composed. This is something that you need to be aware of in your own writing. There are 4 kinds of sentences. The first one is a simple sentence. This is the same thing as an independent clause. The two terms are synonymous, independent clause and simple sentence. This has no subordinate clauses. It can have a compound subject, it can have a compound verb, but no subordinate clauses. For example, in the first sentence, the boys wanted to take a vacation last summer. Wanted is the verb. Who wanted? The boys wanted. To take a vacation last summer is an infinitive phrase. So we only have one verb in that sentence. It is a simple sentence. Ray and Joe worked and saved enough for a trip to Ohio. Worked is a verb. Saved is a verb. Who worked and saved? Ray and Joe worked and saved. We have a couple of prepositional phrases in that sentence. Even though we have two verbs, those verbs share the subject Ray and Joe. That's a compound verb, not a compound sentence. This is a simple sentence. The next kind of sentence is a compound sentence. This is where you have two or more independent clauses. There are three ways to create a compound. These three ways are: 1, a comma and a coordinating conjunction, or fanboy. Fanboys join like objects, therefore they can join two sentences. You can join a sentence using a semicolon. You can also use a semicolon and a conjunctive adverb. For example, originally they wanted to ride bikes all the way, but they decided to take the train instead. Comma and a fanboy joins two whole sentences. Let's take a look at them. Wanted is the verb. Who wanted? They wanted. To ride bikes all the way is an infinitive. Originally is an adverb. Originally they wanted to ride bikes all the way. That's a sentence. Decided is a verb. Who decided? They decided. To take the train instead is another infinitive. They decided to take the train instead is a sentence. Two sentences joined by a comma and a coordinating conjunction. Ray looked forward to seeing his cousin. Joe was eager to play in his uncle's band. The big clue that this is a compound sentence is the semicolon. But again, let's look at these sentences. Looked is the verb. Who looked? Ray looked. How did he look? He looked forward. Therefore, forward is an adverb. To seeing his cousin is an infinitive. Ray looked forward to seeing his cousin. That's a sentence. In the next sentence, was is the verb. Joe is the subject. Was is a linking verb, so eager is a predicate adjective. To play in his uncle's band is yet another infinitive. Joe was eager to play in his uncle's band. That's a sentence. You have two sentences joined by a semicolon, compound sentence. Finally, we have Uncle James played in a country music band, semicolon, however, conjunctive adverb, however. Joe preferred rock music. Where are the verbs? Played is a verb. Who played? Uncle James played. In a country rock band is a prep phrase. Modifying played, adverb phrase. Uncle James played in a country music band, sentence. Joe preferred rock music. Preferred is the verb. Joe is the subject. Preferred is an action verb. Preferred what? Rock music, direct object. Joe preferred rock music is a sentence. Two whole sentences joined by a semicolon and a conjunctive adverb is a compound sentence. Then we get into what is called a complex sentence. A complex sentence contains one independent clause and one subordinate clause. It can have more than one subordinate clause, but it must have at least one. Take the example. Because Joe wanted to keep his guitar with him, they decided against taking a plane. Because Joe wanted to keep his guitar with him is a subordinate clause. It does not express a complete thought. In fact, it is an adverb clause telling you why they decided. So in this sentence, they decided against taking a plane stands alone. Because Joe wanted to keep his guitar with him as an adverb clause, you've got one independent, one subordinate, and that equals a complex sentence. Here's an example with more than one subordinate clause. If they took a train, John, who was curious, could see all the sights too. Could see is the verb. Who could see? John could see. Could see what? All the sights. Sentence, John could see all the sights too. If they took a train is a subordinate clause. It tells you under what conditions they could see. It's an adverb clause. It is a complex sentence, but we've got another subordinate clause. Who is curious is an adjective clause telling us about John. Doesn't matter. One independent plus one or more subordinate clauses is what we call a complex sentence. Remember, a sentence with a noun clause is at least a complex sentence. You have to account for the noun clause even though it has an integral, essential function in the sentence. For example, here we've got whoever runs fast will win the race, just like the other example. Runs is the verb, whoever is the subject, will win is the verb, race is the DO. Whoever runs fast is a subordinate clause. It's acting as the subject. Whoever runs fast will win the race counts as one independent. And then within that independent, you have one subordinate, and that equals a complex sentence. So sentences with a noun clause are at a minimum complex. Finally, we have what is called a compound complex sentence. These contain two or more independent clauses and at least one subordinate. The band played at a dance, and Ray was pulled into a line that was starting. Here's our clue that this is a compound sentence. We have a comma and a conjunction. Played is the verb, band is the subject, at a dance is the prep phrase. The band played at a dance. That's a sentence. Ray was pulled into a line. Was pulled, Ray is the subject, into a line is a prep phrase. Ray was pulled into a line. That is a sentence. Here is a subordinate clause. That was starting. That is a relative pronoun. Was starting is the verb. That was starting describes the line. It's a subordinate clause. It's an adjective clause. So in this sentence, you've got the band played at a dance is one independent. And then Ray was pulled into a line. That was starting is an independent with a subordinate. This equals a compound complex sentence. It's like joining the two ideas that we already discussed. To his surprise, he was good at line dancing. Afterward, he joined in whenever he got the chance. Was is the verb. He is the subject. Good is a predicate adjective. To his surprise, prep phrase. At line dancing, prep phrase. To his surprise, he was good at line dancing. That's a sentence. Here's your big clue that there's a compound. The semicolon. Now let's look at the other part of the sentence. Afterward, he joined in whenever he got the chance. Joined is the verb. He is the subject. Afterward is an adverb saying when he joined. In is an adverb saying how he joined. Whenever he got the chance has a verb. It has a subject. It is an adverb clause. Therefore, you have two sentences here with one subordinate clause, compound complex. This graphic organizer makes it really easy to remember how to identify. Across the top, you have independent clauses, down the side, subordinate clauses. If you would like to draw this chart on a test or quiz, I encourage you to do so, but make sure that you leave this part blank or color it in because it's an important part of constructing the graphic organizer. So if we read this, here we have one independent clause, zero subordinate, that equals a simple sentence. Two or more independent clauses with 0 subordinate clauses is a compound sentence. 1 independent clause with 1 or more subordinate clauses is complex. 1 or more subordinate with 2 or more independent, compound, complex. Let's review a couple of examples. I'm going to zoom in on this so you can see. Okay. The forest fire started because someone had not smothered a campfire. Where are the verbs? Started is a verb, and had smothered is a verb. What had started? The forest fire had started. Who had not smothered a campfire? Someone had not smothered a campfire. Had smothered is an action verb. Campfire is the direct object. Here's my clause. Because someone had not smothered a campfire. It's an adverb clause telling you why the fire started. This sentence has 1 independent clause, 1 adverb clause, therefore it is complex. 1 independent, 1 subordinate. The family that bought the house next door is from Seattle. Bought is a verb, is a verb. Who is from Seattle? The family is from Seattle. Bought is an action verb. That is the subject. Bought what? Bought the house. That bought the house next door is my clause. It's modifying the word family. It's an adjective clause. The family is from Seattle is a sentence. We have an adjective clause. Therefore, that is a complex sentence. You can find the remainder of those examples on the worksheet called Review D, Clauses and Sentence Structure. You should mark them exactly as I have in this video.